Hello, church friends. My name is Mark Drow. My wife Deb and I have been members of Chelsea First United Methodist Church for 28 years now. This is a story about gratitude more than anything. Gratitude to my parents, gratitude to what the Detroit News referred to as my adopted grandfather. So I was 9 years old when my father started taking me to the YMCA for swimming lessons. I spent my time on the diving board and swimming and enjoying myself, taking a few lessons. And Dad would converse with men that he met there, and it was just a good time for both of us and a shared event at that age. So I would see my father over in the corner talking to a gentleman who was quite a bit older than my father at the time. Jim was 65 and soon to retire from Kroger. So where he had worked for 30 years. Jim was planning a trip to the old country, his country, Scotland, and him and his wife were set to leave in a couple months. So it was interesting to hear his plans. They planned to take a ship over there and then fly back after spending 10 weeks. So it was shortly thereafter that Jim's wife passed away. Within a month of departing. So Jim approached my father and said he'd like to take me to Scotland for 10 weeks. And my father reluctantly said this is not the time for him to go. And he brought that news home to my mother, and my mother flat out said, when else is he going to get this kind of a trip? And so with some deliberation and thought, they approached me and asked me if I wanted to go on a trip like that. And I said, absolutely, with Jim, who the Detroit News called my adopted grandfather in an article that they wrote just after I left. But Fridays were consumed with swimming, and then after we would swim, we would go to Saunders for ice cream. Typically, that was a hot fudge cream puff sundae back then, and it was a major event, and that's where we started making plans for this trip that was to take place. So my folks drove me to Montreal, where we boarded the ship, and prior to that we met some friends that would be on the ship for the 6 days with us. Jim orchestrated a reunion with some old relatives in Canada. And we met some people there that would also be part of the trip. So we took the Empress of Canada 6 days out of Montreal and landed near London for an adventure of my life. So it was packed full of meeting family, doing things in Scotland and England and Wales that 11-year-old child doesn't typically get to do. So I'm ever grateful for this man and his gratitude towards me. I spent time with his family. Watching TV in England at that time was a real treat because you had to pay for your electric. So there was a stack of shillings on the corner that we would have, and every time the power went out, we would have to feed the meter. It was there that I first saw the Beatles on TV. They were first introduced to British TV. This was about 1963. It would be another year before Ed Sullivan brought them to the United States. So I was enthralled, entranced with that kind of rock and roll. But it was a time where I got to understand the fabric and things that took place in England. We took the train to London, to Prestwick, to Glasgow, Brecon. I met a friend there who was 3 years older than I was, but is still my friend to this day. We kept our relationship alive by trading cassette tapes back and forth over the years, and we've been friends for over 40 years now. So it was a great trip. The return was via BOAC out of London, flew back to Toronto. At that age, little did I know what would transpire in the years ahead, but I was actually invited into the cockpit. So we were an hour into the flight. and I was asked by the stewardess if I would like to join the captain. He let me sit right behind him. He put a set of headphones on me and said, I'd like you to listen to some of the conversation, navigation, and just chatter between pilots. He alerted me to some of the geography that we were crossing, the coast of Greenland, as we came into Newfoundland and crossed into the United States and landed. So it was an exciting time, and I'm ever grateful for Jim and his gratitude, his willingness to take a young kid. So it was a super trip, and it changed me, as my father was worried it would, and all for the good. But thanks for the time.